होता नहीं है बाब इजाबत का वाह हनूज, बिस्मिल पड़ी है चरख पे मेरी दुआ हनूज। गुंचे चमन चमन खिले इस बागे दहर में, दिल ही मेरा है जो नहीं होता है वाह हनूज। बेबालों पर असीर हूँ कुंजे कफस में मीर, जाती नहीं है सर से चमन की हवा हनूज। Also known as Khudae Sukhan, Mir Taqi Mir is arguably one of the greatest poets of the Urdu language. And before I move on to what these shares that I just recited mean, I want to recite a few verses of some other poets who have recognized Mir as a great poet. Mirza Ghalib very famously writes, रेख्ते के तुम ही उस्ताद नहीं हो गालिब, कहते हैं अगले ज़माने में कोई मीर भी था। Only you are not the master of Rekhta or Urdu. It is said that there was a Mir once before you. And another famous poet of the Urdu language who existed in the same timeline as Ghalib, and he was also the court's poet or the poet laureate, Ibrahim Zauq, writes about Mir. ना हुआ पर ना हुआ मीर का अंदाज नसीब, ज़ौक़ यारों ने बहुत ज़ोर गज़ल में मारा. We tried everything, but there is one thing that we were not blessed with, and that was the style of Mir, even though we tried our best to say a ghazal like him. What makes Mir so great? Why do people consider him the master of the Urdu language? What is it about him that even the greatest poet of the Urdu language, arguably Mirza Ghalib, recognizes and is ready to share his throne with someone like Mir? Why is it that someone like Shamsur Rahman Farooqi writes an entire article called Khudae Sukhan, Mir Ya Ghalib? Well, the answer lies in the translation and explanation of those few couplets that I recited at the start. So let's dive right into them. In this ghazal, he starts off by this first couplet. होता नहीं है बाब इजाबत का वाह हनूज, बिस्मिल पड़ी है चरख पे मेरी दुआ हनूज. So, what is he trying to say? Let's break this down. होता नहीं है बाब इजाबत का वाह हनूज, the door of acceptance. Bab is a door, ijabat is acceptance, and hanuz means until now or even now, depending on how you want to read it. In Urdu, it means abhi tak. Hota nahi hai bab ijabat ka wa hanuz. The door of acceptance has not opened even now. Bismil padi hai charkh pe meri dua hanuz. My prayer is on the sky, lying down in almost a death-like state. Bismil means something that is almost dead, something that is in anguish and agony. It's breathing its last. Charkh is from the word charkha, which is also used to describe the universe or the divine workings of the universe or the cosmos. But his beauty in all of this share, where he's trying to say that my prayer has not been accepted, in fact it lies in a death-like state in the heavens, the most beautiful verse that he could have begun with has one word that makes it that beautiful. For me, that word is the word padi, which means it lies there. Now this is something that Mir could do beautifully, because a lot of people would call Mir easy to understand. He's not as complicated as Ghalib, but the point is not to use difficult words. The point is not to be complicated. Complication doesn't necessarily make a great poet. What makes a great poet is the ability to convey a lot in very less. In fact, it might also be the ability to convey multiple things with one word. And this is something that Mir was a master of. The word padi is important here. It translates to lies, as in lying down. Why is it that Mir calls his prayer or conveys or depicts his prayer as something that is lying down in the heavens or in the skies? Now this is where the beauty lies, because what he's trying to say is that my prayer is lying unattended while everyone else's prayers are getting accepted. That is one meaning. When he says padi, it's almost with anguish and frustration, because he's like, why is it that my prayer has not been accepted? Why is it that mine lies unattended while everyone else's gets accepted? Another meaning of padi could be discarded, which means that someone has seen his prayer in the skies, obviously referring to God, but God has discarded his prayer, which is why it's lying outside. Just like trash lies outside a house, his prayer lies outside the door of acceptance. Another meaning that could come out of the word padi is the idea that somehow it itself does not have the strength to open the doors of acceptance. That somehow the prayer itself is so weak, bismil, that it is lying down. It does not have the capacity to fly or walk into the doors of acceptance. That the one who is praying is weak and feeble. And Mir is successfully able to communicate all of these meanings, where he can blame the universe, and then he can also blame his own prayer, and he can also blame his own luck, all at the same time, just to say that he is someone who is extremely unlucky and unfortunate, but more than that, miserable, because he desires some attention and he will never get it. He will always be this close to the door of acceptance, and yet he will be rejected. This ability to create ambiguity, or in Urdu we call it ibham, is the sign of a great, great poet. And to do it with just a single word like padi is out of this world. The next sher. Gunche chaman chaman ke khile, is baage dahar mein, dil hi mera hai jo nahi hota hai wa hanuz. Guncha is a seedling in Urdu, एक कली जो कि अभी खिली नहीं है, a closed bud. Gunche chaman chaman khile is baage dahar mein, in this garden of the world, dahar. The seedlings and the buds bloomed into flowers. And chaman chaman means, in English, it would literally translate into a garden, but it actually means that there were so many flowers that in every garden, every bud decided to bloom. Dil hi mera hai jo nahi hota hai wahnus. But I am the unfortunate, for it is my heart that is the one that does not bloom, or that does not open. Now once again, it's beautiful because he draws some equivalences. He equates the world to a garden. He equates the luck of others to buds that are blooming into flowers. And then he equates his own heart as a bud that is encapsulated between something but has yet to open up. Once again, he could be blaming the cosmos for it, he could be blaming the divine for it, he could be blaming the universe for it, but he could also be blaming himself for it, because he says that I am unable to express what I want, because for the heart to open also means that there is a freedom of expression that you are comfortable expressing your needs, that you are comfortable expressing your love. But Mir finds himself in this extremely congested space where it is almost impossible for him to open his heart. Also, mind you, that he is conveying a sense of uncontrollability, because you can't control a flower from blooming. A huncha will bloom when it wants to, when it is time. And so, while you can berate it, you can lament it for not blooming, you can't make it bloom. You can't turn it into a flower. And the same is the case with Mir's heart, that it's closed. And no matter how much he wants to open it, no matter how much he wants to fall in love, or no matter how much he wants to express it to the beloved, he says there is almost a function of nature that will happen in its own time. Dil hi mera hai jo nahi hota hai wahunus. And then there is some regret that everyone experiences this love in this garden, that everyone is able to bloom into a flower, that everyone is able to express their true colors. But I am the unfortunate one whose heart remains closed. And then he ends this large ghazal, from whom I've picked just 3 couplets. He ends it by saying, बेबालो पर असीर हूँ कुंजे कफस में मीर, जाती नहीं है सर से चमन की हवा हनूस. Absolutely beautiful. बेबालो पर, I am without wings. असीर हूँ कुंजे कफस में मीर, I am without wings, trapped inside the cage, मीर. जाती नहीं है सर से चमन की हवा हनूज. And from my head the wind of the garden does not flow. What he is saying is that there is so much suffocation inside this cage that he is not able to experience the winds of favor, the winds of luck. But I want you to focus on the first misra of this couplet. बेबालो पर असीर हूँ कुंजे कफस में मीर. It is beautiful because he adds layers upon layers of confinement, of how much he is restricted. So the first layer of restriction is him being bebalo par, which means without wings. So that is the first constriction. He is a bird that does not have wings, or someone has cut his wings. Then there is asiri, which means being imprisoned. So we know that he is also being held against his own will. So he doesn't have wings, and then someone's holding him against his own will. But then there is a third layer of misfortune, which is kunje kafas mein mir, which is he is lying inside some corner of a cage. So he is unwinged, someone has held him against his will and then put him inside a cage. Jati nahi hai sar se chaman ki hawa hanuz. Obviously, it is an obvious understanding that there is no favorable wind that will flow into Mir's life. And obviously this is a metaphor for his existence on earth, for how confined and restricted an artist, a genius like him, finds himself, with his wings cut off, confined against his will, and then caged on top of it, without any sense of hope, any sense of beauty, and any sense of freedom that a soul like his deserves.